This is the Cascadia Podcasters Podcast, and I'm your host, Jason Rigdon. On this episode, I have Paige and Morgan from the Sleep Creeps podcast. How are you today?
Hey, we're doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Could you tell me a little bit about your show?
Yeah, so we both suffer from like a myriad of sleep disorders, and we have been friends for a long time, and we started talking about it on Facebook, and then Morgan was like, want to do a podcast.
Yeah.
And
it's pretty interesting stuff. And I know there's other people out there that, maybe want to, have their experiences, shared too. So
yeah. So, and then, we started with the primary focus of sleep paralysis. And then as we got more into it, we found weirder and weirder sleep disorders. And it's been kind of a wild ride, but, and it's great because we get a lot of feedback actually from people who are like, that explains exactly what's been happening to me my whole life. And I had no idea that there was a name for that.
Yeah.
Sleep is very strange. Like when you, at least my experience, when you go to a doctor and talk about this stuff, they have no idea what you're talking about. At least maybe I had bad doctors.
I mean, that's definitely a possibility. But like for a lot of this stuff, there's no real way to treat it. Like for sleep paralysis, like basically that's an anxiety thing. It's a parasomnia caused by stress and anxiety. But if you are like me and resistant to benzos or other types of mood stabilizers, then there's really nothing they can do for you other than tell you to, meditate and do yoga, or in my case, lose 10 pounds. I had a doctor tell me to lose 10 pounds and maybe I would stop getting sleep paralysis.
Wow. No.
Yeah, no. Like my arm's off. Well, have you considered that you're fat? Oh, and also we kind of tongue in cheek the whole thing because it's really horrifying, and so we try to make it funny so that it takes the edge off of how terrifying this experience, like of sleep paralysis or narcolepsy or even just like run-of-the-mill sleep apnea, can be really terrifying if you don't know what's happening. And so we kind of tongue in cheek it to take a little bit of the bite out of it.
So are you covering basically like all kinds of sleep disorders or just like kind of like a subset?
No, yeah. So we're covering all types of sleep disorders. Most of the disorders that we've covered so far are parasomnias, with the exception of like narcolepsy is not a parasomnia. And a parasomnia is just when your brain does something it's not supposed to do while you're sleeping. And
so how long have you been doing this show?
It's been a few months.
Yeah, we started recording in January, but we didn't release until March.
Yeah, it was March.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you basically like kind of bank up some episodes? So you had like, like 5 or some in like the can?
We had exactly 5, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, because Morgan and I both realized the reality of the situation is that we're flakes and, like in our late 20s, early 30s, and life happens, So we wanted to make sure that we were able to release on a schedule without stressing ourselves out into sleep paralysis episodes.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of the advantages of not doing a show that's like dependent on like current events or something. The sleep stuff is going to be happening. Maybe not forever. I don't know.
I mean, for most parasomnias, it tapers off as you get older. So like once you hit middle age and, like you're like face to face with your mortality, like they kind of tend to drop off.
They don't hold as much power.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then how many episodes have you done total?
We have 11 recorded.
Yeah, 11 recorded and 8 out so far.
But we're releasing 9 tomorrow.
Tonight, yeah, 9 is going to be out tomorrow.
So what really motivated you to start the show and also like as a podcast? Because you could probably also do this maybe as like a YouTube series or maybe even like just a blog.
Listen, I have a face for radio. So
I think it would take a lot of pressure off just to do the podcast because our voices are pretty not annoying. And
I hope.
Yeah. And
writing. Yeah. Cause I write for like professionally. And so having another thing to write, like a blog, would have just been too much for me. And Morgan too. We both are very, very busy. And so I think it takes less time for us to take 2 hours once a week to record and edit than it would to write out meaningful blogs. Plus, there are not a lot of sleep-related podcasts. There's like maybe 1 or 2, and they're usually about how to get better sleep, not necessarily about sleep disorders. When we were thinking about doing this, we were trying to research other podcasts about this and could not find any.
Really wasn't any.
But there are a lot of blogs. It's pretty oversaturated because people want to write about it. And so we felt like this was probably the best medium. Plus, it means I get to hang out with my friend, like once a week and like actually get FaceTime with Morgan, which before this, I think we've been friends for almost 5 years. And I think prior to this podcast, we had hung out in person maybe 10 times.
Yeah. It's just a fun thing to do, every other week.
Yeah.
And learned a new skill with editing audio. And
my mom bought us a fancy microphone.
And had you done any podcasts before this one?
So I did. Yeah. My former boss at the monolithic tech company that shall not be named in Seattle runs the biggest sci-fi fantasy book club on Goodreads. And so for a while we were doing a podcast about those books akin to Swords and Lasers. But scheduling became impossible. So I think we did it for like 10 months. It was called The Podcast at the End of the Universe.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't done anything like this before. So it was definitely a new experience for me. New medium.
You took to it like a duck in water, man. Like it was so funny because when we recorded the first one, because when we did Podcast at the End of the Universe, we used GarageBand. And I didn't do any of the editing. I just sat there and made funny comments about shitty writers. And then Morgan came over and like we installed Audacity and she was like, oh, and we do this, and this, and we have to do this and this. It was like talking to a pro in a studio. It was kind of bananas actually. So I'm very grateful. And then when I started Let's Talk About Sex Baby, which is my other podcast, I basically just picked Morgan's brain about how to edit, and it worked out really well.
And what have been some of the biggest challenges of doing this show?
Scheduling. And there's only so many sleep disorders.
Yeah. There's kind of a finite, but you've really dug deep and found some really interesting ones that I've never heard of.
Yeah. Like, have you ever heard of exploding head syndrome?
What? No.
Yeah. So a lot of people experience this. It's actually really common, but people don't have a name for it. And exploding head syndrome is when you're falling asleep and right at the minute before you pass into full unconsciousness, you hear a really loud bang, like a gunshot, but it's just in your head.
Oh my. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And then it like startles you awake. And some people that happens like several times a night, and some people just experience it once or twice.
So do you do any like Patreon or do any ads right now?
So we are sponsored by a friend of my company called Oklahoma Made. They make like ethical, reusable, renewable self-care products. And they basically pay for our hosting. And we just launched a Patreon today.
Congratulations. And how's that worked out for you?
Well, we just launched it today. So it hasn't yet. I actually haven't even, we haven't promoted it or anything. It was while we were waiting for you, I clicked launch.
But the ads, how did those work out? Having a relationship with like another business could be, maybe difficult.
So the person who owns the company is one of my like best friends. And it's really funny because I've never actually met her in person. We met on like an atheist group and on Facebook, but we've been really good friends and we've been passing the same $200 back and forth for 4 years now to keep each other alive. And her products are amazing. She made soap actually for me and Morgan. Basically we just have a link back. So Google Analytics tracks clicks from our site to hers and vice versa. And she paid for our Wix hosting, which was pretty cool.
And so then where do you host those like MP3 files for the show? Yeah,
so we use Podbean for our physical hosting. And then we populate that to other places through RSS or direct upload.
Yeah.
And how do you like that service so far?
I dig Podbean. I'm going to be sad when I have to pay for it because we run out of space.
Well, I got the 14 a month one.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh shit, we're already paying for it. Never mind.
So that we could have the space. I think it was a very small amount that we could have without it. So I was like, just
So what you're saying is I should have been Venmoing you $7 all this time?
No, that's okay, because you do other stuff that it just kind of evens out in my brain.
Okay.
Yeah.
I should stop bumming cigarettes off you, though, if you're going to be...
But yeah, I really like the Podbean. It's easy to use, automatic. I can schedule the uploads and everything. Yeah, so it's been pretty great.
Yeah.
And what microphone do you use right now?
So like I said, my mom bought this for us, actually, because I told my mom we were going to do a podcast, and she's not supportive enough to listen to it. But she was supportive enough to buy the microphone. It's the Amazon Basics studio compressor mic. It's like $60. It's USB, but it has option for like a regular mic hookup, the 3.5 or the, I don't remember what it's called, and my audio tech nerds are going to be losing their fucking mind about that. But it's great because it's omnidirectional and it's a condenser mic. So it's got pretty good compression rates. I record music as well, and I do it on this mic totally fine. And
yeah, there was no like learning curve, because sometimes, like a new microphone, it takes a little while to kind of learn how to use it.
No, I've been a musician for a really long time. So a mic is a mic is a mic for the most part. I think I hit buttons on it for like 30 minutes and was like, oh, okay, we're good.
And do you ever have guests on the show?
Yeah. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, we do. Episode 8, which came out last week, we had
B from Fat Fancy down in Portland, Oregon. They're my friend that owns a plus size consignment shop, and they came on to talk about their sleep eating.
And listen, they're our wife. Okay. When B came up here, the three of us got fake married. So first fake polyamorous marriage in Washington is me, Morgan, and B. Just so you know.
Oh my gosh.
There are.
That's not real. We haven't.
No, it's not.
Just to be clear.
I just like saying it because it makes Morgan uncomfortable. Sorry, what was your question?
And did you do that in person, or was this like over Skype?
Oh, always in person.
Okay, cool.
I like exposing people to the trash fire that's my house.
It definitely had a really good energy. And then
Twilight Sparkles.
Yeah, we had a guest on
10 and 11.
Who wanted to be identified as Twilight Sparkles, talk about their sleep paralysis demon, and it got really intense.
Yeah, like had to put a trigger warning on the episode. Yeah.
And I think you mentioned earlier, but what software do you use to edit your show?
We use Audacity to record and edit the podcast.
And you seem pretty happy with it. It's a really great free product.
Yeah, it is. Anything I don't have to pay money for.
Like I have a copy of Ableton for music and stuff, but it's just, there's too much. Audacity is super...
It's simple.
Yeah.
It's just what you need. Yeah.
Ableton's
Nothing
great
else.
if you have like multi-instrument inputs and a looper pedal and you want to add a drum machine and that kind of stuff. But for a podcast, it's like, quick, honey, get the axe. There's a fly on the baby's forehead.
And how long does your post-production take usually?
Well, since we've been pre-recording some of the things like the sponsorship and everything, and just editing things once and then, kind of popping it in there, it's really brought the post-production down, the timeline at least. But it typically takes me, a couple hours, depending on how many tangents that we go on and how inappropriate they are, and having to should we keep this or that or whatever.
Yeah, I get a lot of text messages at 2:00 in the morning, be like, you talked about anal sex. Would you like to remove that?
Should I remove that?
So
how much of the show that you record do you think you remove?
Well, so we usually record for about an hour, and our episodes are between 30 minutes and 45 minutes. It depends on how many tangents we go on, because I talk too fucking much.
But for the most part, as we've been kind of getting into it and doing more, it's just been more about taking the ums and ands and mouth sounds and, while we're Googling things and there's long periods of silence, just editing all that stuff out is usually what it's been. So,
yeah.
And how do you prepare for your episodes?
We drink coffee.
We just run straight at the mic.
Yeah. With a war cry.
Yeah.
There's some blood rituals.
We've punched each other in the noses and put each other's blood on our faces.
Yeah. No, none of that is true. We literally just drink coffee and sit down in front of this mic.
Yeah, and we're like, okay, what are we doing? Yeah.
So no notes or anything, just straight into it?
So we have notes because we have a portion called What Science Says, where we, use documented, peer-reviewed academic papers to provide facts about whatever disorder we're talking about, because we're responsible and ethical and science fucking matters. And so we have those notes and our sources in a Google Drive, and usually we'll read them over and read them live on the air, like our notes. But yeah, for most of it, we're just winging it, man.
Because a lot of the time it's a personal experience or something like that. But you do a lot of the research and get the notes up for the science part, and then we have another part called Venus and Gatorade where it's kind of dream interpretation, like very tongue-in-cheek interpretation, where we just Google different parts of the dream that from one of us or someone on that comes on, like a guest, and
or our listener
stories. Yeah.
And then we basically make fun of people who live by dream interpretations. And we're pretty clear, like how you choose to live your life. If you want to believe that you behave in that way because of your zodiac sign, that's cool, man, as long as you vaccinate your fucking kids.
That's like good advice. So do you decide like at the time what your topic is going to be, or do you talk about it maybe earlier?
So I have a schedule for like the next, usually like 6 episodes out of what disorder we're going to talk about. And we basically just reach inside a hat and pick one, because all the notes and stuff, all that research is already done because my day job's really boring.
And do you have any advice for maybe new podcasters or folks that are just thinking about starting a show?
Just do it, man. It's wicked fun. Like, I think a lot of people who have really great things to say get intimidated by like really well-produced podcasts. Like some of my favorites are like Battle Tactics for Your Sexist Workplace, which is like an NPR-sponsored podcast, and their production is amazing. Or like people who listen to Radiolab are like, well, I'll never be able to produce something like that. And I really just want to tell those people to fuck off with their insecurities and just do it. Because it doesn't have to sound like you sat in a studio and are getting $1,000 a month just to talk. Like, it literally, I feel like every person has something interesting to say. And if, there are podcasts that are just like people screaming about things and they're unpleasant to listen to and they have millions of followers. So like, I really feel like podcasting in particular gives value to human voice in a way that other mediums don't. And I wish more people would do it.
That is such amazing advice. I totally love that.
And it's free. Like, literally you can do this shit for free.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't cost that much. I mean, even when you have to spend some money, you can keep it to be very low and very reasonable and like under $20.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah,
most definitely. And like, if I okay, so let's say we didn't use Podbean. You can go onto literally like any hosting site. I don't want to name companies, but you could go to literally any hosting site, and most of them have like a free year or a free month or a free whatever, and you could host your own RSS feed and feed into all of this stuff. It would take a little more know-how, but you could literally do this for free for probably an entire year without ever putting a penny into it. And it's less convenient to do it that way, but you definitely could. I just want to hear about other people's lived experiences. And I feel like podcasting is a way to create global empathy that is really lacking in any other medium, short of people's vlogs. But with podcasting, because you don't see their face, you empathize more because you're putting on what you want them to look and feel onto their words. And so it's easier, I feel, to build empathy with this medium in particular.
Yeah, it's very, very special. I mean, people do want to compare it to like, YouTube or who knows what else, but it's just something very special. Like the relationship you build with a listener is so unique because you're like in their head about when they're going about their day. You're like a companion.
Yeah. Yeah. A friend of mine started working in a warehouse recently, and before this, he was being the worst friend ever and wasn't listening to the podcast. And then he binged all 8 episodes in like one day. And we carpool into work together. And he was like, I listen to all of your podcasts and I just need you to put out more of it because I don't like, we've been friends for a long time, but I don't think I actually knew you before I listened to this podcast. And then like a couple of days ago, we got an email from a stranger. Like we got an email from someone that neither one of us really knows about talking about their sleep experience. And that was like really like it touched my little broken, fragile heart. I was like, oh my God, like somebody who doesn't have a personal relationship with Morgan or myself listened to us and empathized with us and felt like they needed to share their experience too. And that was really just like I'm going to get misty. Misty.
I guess like sleep disorders as well, or just like nightmares and things like that. You're kind of dealing with that on your own.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess for me, it was kind of nice to be able to talk about it and then also hear other people's stories as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just, yeah, like you said, like kind of in a just personal way.
Well, and also, like, we did an episode on narcolepsy, and I've got 2 really close friends of mine who have narcolepsy, and we were asking them about their diagnosis experience. And both of them were like, you have to advocate for yourself. You have to know what the signs are. You have to be able to do these things. And so I feel like with us talking about it and talking about the symptoms of what it looks like and how it feels to experience it, more people will be able to advocate for themselves in a medical setting where, I mean, American healthcare is a joke, like, and our doctors want to do what they're paid to do by the pharmaceutical companies and by those, not necessarily what's good for your health. And so if you know how to be a self-advocate by listening to something that's providing you with an education, it can have an earlier intervention for something like sleep apnea or something like sexomnia we were talking about, or narcolepsy or something, because there are ways to treat those things that you would never know unless you were strongly advocating for yourself in a medical setting. It's very difficult to get a sleep study. And you'd think it wouldn't be, because sleep apnea affects like 45% of the population at one point or another. And it's incredibly difficult to get a sleep study.
So how much time do you think you spend promoting your show, trying to connect with these folks?
Not enough. That's something that we're always kind of just always working on.
We're bad at social media. Like I have a pretty decent following on my like personal stuff, and Morgan is an artist and has a pretty decent following for their art. But like, really, I think we're just really busy. And so like I managed to post on our Facebook and Twitter like several times today, but that's like an anomaly. For the most part, we're really freaking lame about it, actually.
Yeah, we're looking at other avenues to kind of outsource to help, with other people who are maybe a little more versed in doing that.
We need an unpaid intern.
Yeah, it can be very draining at times, especially when you're putting stuff out on social media and there's not really any interaction. You're like, oh, I don't even know what I'm doing wrong.
Well, we don't get a whole lot of interaction on Twitter, but we definitely get engagement on Facebook and Instagram, which is good. But they're, for the most part, like for Twitter and Instagram, it's people that know us and they're like, oh, we'll support you by hitting the heart button. Facebook, we have some stranger interaction, which is pretty awesome.
And do you keep up much with like the podcast industry news at all?
So I follow like Stitcher and TuneIn and you, but that's it. Beyond that, I just listen to too many podcasts.
Yeah, I mostly just listen to podcasts for the most part.
And so you are active podcast listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you discover your new shows?
By word of mouth for the most part.
Yeah, or so anytime I finish a podcast, I always look at what Spotify or iTunes says is like it. And that doesn't always serve me very well, but sometimes it does. I found some really great podcasts that way, actually. And then I belong to a lot of like Facebook groups, like secret groups for podcasters and content creators in general and influencers. And so a lot of them have podcasts and they'll be like, oh, well, this is my podcast. And so I've got like, I don't know, I think I'm subscribed to like 145 different podcasts now, but it's what fills my time in between my Audible credits.
Mm-hmm.
And how can people find your show?
Yeah, so we're on Facebook with the Sleep Creeps podcast.
Yeah, we're on Instagram as well, the Sleep Creeps.
And then Twitter at the Sleep Creeps.
Mm-hmm.
And our website is thesleepcreeps.com. And
they can write in to our email as well, which is thesleepcreepspodcast@gmail.com.
And then patreon.com/thesleepcreeps.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This was wicked fun.
Yeah, thanks, Jason.
I will definitely try to stop flaking out on meetups. Yesterday, I ran out of gas on my way there.
Oh, no.
And I had to have a friend come rescue me, and at that point, it was like too late. But next time, Gadget, next time.
Well, I hope to see you there.
I'm sure you will. I'm hard to miss. I'm covered in tattoos, and I'm fat, and I have blue hair.
Well, thanks again for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. This is really
thank you.
It's pretty cool to find community this way. And I think you're doing a wonderful job.